I 29 female cheated on my husband, 35 male of 10 years, how to move on from here. We've been married for 10 years and have 3 children. Our marriage has experienced many ups and downs, particularly in the last several years. I've always suffered with depression, and I've been feeling quite overwhelmed with my life for the last year. We don't have any relatives nearby, we have troubles with our kids, etc. And I've had numerous emotions of wanting to leave my life. I adore my spouse, but I had an affair a few months back. We only met 3 times, but communicated on a daily basis until all came out 2 weeks ago. My husband discovered an email account of mine in which he received communications from another guy I had just met despite the fact that we had not yet had. Yes, I was starting a new relationship. So now that I've told him everything, he wanted to forgive me and go on. He alternates between being highly furious, almost to the point of going after the other guy and injuring him, terribly sad, and hopeful/compassionate towards me. He knows that this was not truly him. He has never done anything like this before, and he has to find out why he did it. He requested that I receive STD testing and therapy, which I have done. He then phoned the spouses of the other 2 guys and informed them of what had occurred. I'm not in touch with either of them right now, but I did speak with the one I'd been engaged with the longest, and the chat was not pleasant. We were never in love, and being together was never an option, even though I believe we cared for one another on some level. Now, I feel like I was an idiot, which is difficult to cope with as well. I want to be content with my marriage. I'm prepared to go to any length to find out whether we can be happy together. That is what our children deserve. Meanwhile, every day is a battle. He believes I don't really love him since I couldn't do the things I did. The other man lived a great distance away. There was a lot of deception involved in the few times I saw him. He'll question me about the facts of the affair, and I'll try to be open and honest, but it sometimes enrages him. I thought whether it would have been better if I had just terminated the affair, focused on my marriage, and never told him. This is agonizing for both of us. If anybody has gone through this, I'd love to learn what worked for them and how they rectified a situation like this. Thanks. Added after the fact, someone requested me to provide additional information about the relationship up to this point. I've been in a relationship with my spouse since I was 17 years old. We were both of the same faith back then, but in the last several years I've given up all religion and he's switched to another. That generated problems. We also had a dead bedroom for a long time, which I attribute mostly to years of pregnancy and nursing, as well as my unhappiness and our strained relationship. I'm not making excuses for what I did. There are none. However, our connection hasn't been fantastic in a long time. I'm a stay-at-home mom with no relatives nearby. I seldom get a break, and for the last 7 years, my life has centered around him and my children. I didn't fall in love with the guy I was engaged with, but I did fall in desire for him and ate up all of his attention. I separated the entire thing from reality, and anybody who knows the real me would never think I could do anything like this. I'm sorry for what I did to my husband, and I'm sorry for seeing him so upset and wailing on the floor about how this has wrecked him. Nonetheless, he still loves me, supports me, and wishes for my recovery, so that we may be happy again. That's all I'm looking for. I feel like I made a major mess of everything, and I'm going to work on regaining his trust, but I'm still shattered by the entire thing, and I'm trying to get out of this fog and figure out what to do. Thanks. Story 2. My 28 female stepsister, 29 female, slept with my ex-fiancé, 37 male, and married him. It's been 5 years and my family think I should be over it already. Ryan proposed to me when I was 23, now 28, was 32, now 37. Our engagement ended when my stepsister Kelly, then 24, now 29, asked me to leave him because they loved each other, but Ryan was too terrified to split up with me and my family. When I questioned Ryan about it, he denied it, claiming that she had been trying to come on to him for some time and that he never discussed it because he didn't want to damage our relationship. He urged me not to believe her, so we carried on as usual. Kelly became enraged and made snide remarks about how I was pushing a guy who didn't even love me to marry me because I had poor self-esteem all the time. A month later, she emailed me a video of them having in my bed, as well as many screenshots of him expressing her how much he loved her, how he wished she was the person he was marrying, and how he despised the fact that I wouldn't allow them be together. I was saddened and enraged, but my closest friend persuaded me not to go nuclear on them and instead to discreetly leave when Ryan returned to work the next week. That's exactly what I did. I phoned my father and stepmother and requested if I could temporarily live with them. I took the money I had put into our joint account for wedding expenditures and transferred the remainder to him before closing the account. I emailed all of the screenshots she provided me to all of our family, and as once I was established here. Ryan attempted many times to get back together with me, but I ended up blocking him when I discovered he had proposed to her with the same ring he gave me. I left it behind. Kelly is now my stepsister from my mother's side. From my mother's second marriage, I have another stepsister, 36, and stepbrother, 38, as well as a half-sister, 26. They all attended the wedding. When I attempted to communicate how wounded I was by the fact that they were just supporting Kelly/Ryan, as if what they'd done to me was nothing, they shrugged it off and said they couldn't cut them out entirely since they were family. I haven't spent a single Christmas with my mother's family since, nor have my older biological brother or sister. Kelly/Ryan moved in with my mom and stepdad a year after they married, so I only see my mother and half-sister when I ask them over. Our connection is strained, but I've become closer to my father/stepmother and their children, an older stepbrother and 2 younger half-siblings, who have all been extremely supportive since this all occurred, so it hasn't all been horrible. My boyfriend, now husband, proposed to me on New Year's Day. We arranged a little engagement party, and I invited my mother and half-sister as well. They didn't show up because I was excluding half of our family. I never invited my stepfather or stepsiblings, since they were really upset when it was discovered that Kelly and Ryan were sleeping together. They said it wasn't their fault I got in the way of true love, and they painted me as a vengeful Disney villain for being upset with them. We had planned to have our wedding ceremony this summer, but my husband recommended we postpone until next year since he was worried COVID might worsen and we would have to cancel/reschedule anyhow. I found out I was pregnant a month before our scheduled wedding date, so we had a courthouse wedding on that day with the intention of doing the ceremony the following year. Only my father's side of the family was aware of the pregnancy and wedding. My stepmother enjoys knitting, so she has started creating items for the baby. She recently posted on Facebook about the items she had created, with a remark about how pleased she was to welcome another grandchild soon. I was mentioned in the post. I have no objections to the post. I never informed my family I wasn't going to tell my mother's side. It wasn't that I deliberately kept it from her. She simply didn't seem interested in my life or relationship, so I never brought it up. My mother phoned an hour later, demanding to know if I was pregnant and how she couldn't believe I hadn't informed her she was going to be a grandmother for the first time. She has subsequently asked me and my husband to her home many times, but I have rejected each time for obvious reasons. My stepfather, with whom I haven't talked in 5 years, has reached out to express his excitement for meeting the baby and my spouse, as have my siblings. Kelly even contacted my husband to congratulate us. I was enraged. When my mother and stepfather phoned again, I finally confronted them. I told them I didn't want them to keep inviting me over when they knew I'd be forced to see Kelly/Ryan if I came. I told them how hurt and angry I was over what they did to me and how my family dismissed my feelings. I told them how they wouldn't throw Kelly/Ryan away, but were so quick to leave me out to rot while I was going through the worst betrayal I'd ever experienced in my life. I told them I wasn't. My mother was sobbing uncontrollably and repeatedly told me that I was being cruel and that I couldn't deprive her of her first grandchild. My kid isn't her first grandchild. My sister already has 2 adopted girls with whom my mother makes no attempt to interact. She was screaming about how I could be the only one in our family to have grandkids. My stepsisters are both having difficulty getting/staying pregnant, and my half-sister has declared herself childless. My stepfather became enraged and defensive. He accused me of being petty for hanging on to something that occurred 5 years ago. He pointed out that I had found someone else, so I should understand how love works, and that sometimes 2 people can't help but fall in love. Basically, you love who you love. He said that Kelly and Ryan were happy together. Therefore, I should be pleased for them in the same manner that they are happy for me and my husband. The irony is that my sister informed me Kelly and Ryan seemed to be on the brink of divorce, that they argued often, my mom worries about them, and that my siblings all despise him but pretend to like him for Kelly's sake. I ended up hanging up because I was so upset, and when I'm angry I cry, and I didn't want them to believe they had gotten to me. Since then, I've been bombarded with messages and phone calls from my mother's relatives. They're all basically telling me that I should be over it by now. It's gotten to the point where my husband and I have swapped phones so he can screen my texts and I don't have to read them.